1, 2. It is 3 p.m. Wow. On Sunday, June 29th, year 2025. Mark Kulak, Housatonic.live, Housatonic. River in the northeast region of the United States of America, continent of North America, on Earth, etc. My little studio here is in the corner of a room in my house. I broadcast about 30 minutes or so without any traffic during a non-traffic time from the city of Boston in the region of the United States known as New England. My name is Mark Kulak, Kulakz. I have a LinkedIn profile. I haven't updated it in a few years with all kinds of technical jibbery jab, things that I used to do when I was in the tech industry. I worked at companies like EMC Corporation, Dell, NetApp, Corporate Technologies, Mercury Computer Systems, Data General, which was purchased by EMC, if I didn't say that already, Datto Corporation, which is interesting, and I think one or two other ones. I went to University of Connecticut, got a degree in computer engineering, spent most of my career as a software developer, software engineer, operating systems in the data storage industry. And after about 10 or 12 years, I transitioned into product marketing, competitive intelligence analyst. I did some pre-sales work, etc. And it was issues related to chronic illness, and particularly chronic fatigue, believe it or not, and probably even more so drug addiction or opioid addiction in the United States of America, which about 10 years ago, approximately now, caused our family to collectively anyways try to understand why such hot issues, which were impacting so many people and already causing so many deaths back then, weren't getting more visibility. One thing led to the next. There was this, at least I thought it was a sincere, but now I think most of it was controlled, citizen journalism upstart new atmosphere in the Trump administration. As it turns out, I think most of while some people are genuine, a lot of people have been misled by personalities who are actually on the payroll. One of the reasons why I left my job, to my well-paying job anyways, to do this, which I thought would actually be able to pay something, at one point in time, was because I saw other people doing it. And I guess if you do your job well, and I know that I'm a pretty good analyst, I could collect enough data and probably tie a lot of things together that there should have been a role for me. And while there is a role for me, there isn't money for me. This isn't starting off as a whining and complaining, please give me more money, although that's always helpful. You can go to houstonic.live. I have a budget or support drop-down menu, Patreon, PayPal. I do a very bad job of interacting on any of those things, but I guarantee you can definitely see the result of the output. This is our 6th year. We're closing in on 6 full years this September. We have 1,300-something full-length episodes, several hundred shorter episodes, 500 or 600. So we're closing in on 2,000 overall, and several hundred additional videos from other sources, which I've backed up and have made available on my platform. Some of them are hard to get. We have a large amount of media, books, which can be downloaded. I can promise you that we have the largest independently maintained wiki-like archive, I think, on the internet right now. If I download it and print it out, it's probably, I don't know. I haven't done it in a while. 20 to 30,000 pages. I don't know. It's a bit unfair. It's not to suggest that I wrote 20 to 30,000 pages of stuff. And there are things which will appear on multiple pages, the same content, because of, when you're doing a wiki article, you have some things reference other things multiple times. But the point is that it's all independently maintained. Of the budget that we have, the operating budget, which is publicly posted, several $100s a month is allocated towards equipment, and which doesn't have to be purchased every month, of course. Sometimes you just happen to have a busy cycle, and sometimes you get to go for a while, as well as backup media. And every month we invest about right now $250 in a backup drive, which we'll send to a different location in North America, most likely, once per month, so that we have multiple backup copies of everything that we've done, which includes backup of all of the videos. The live streams that we do, I usually do one and done live streams. Sometimes I'll clean them up afterwards. We stream you, because you're here, so you're part of the we, right? But it's really, this is me, and before I even say that anything more, I definitely couldn't be doing it without your financial support. I definitely couldn't be doing it without the family still supporting it. Although we have to have a lot of conversations right now. It can't go on forever, being negative. And with a couple of, in particular, other good people who have put everything on the line. In particular, Jonathan Cooey, GigaOhm Biological. Please check him out. GigaOhm, that's GigaOhm Biological. You should know how to spell that one.com. And he is a neurobiologist, scientist who is currently working out of Pittsburgh. And he has a lot of credentials that I don't for biological topics. So while it was health-related issues, which got me interested in this particular line of work, because I was in the computer industry, I thought that I would do a lot of history of computing material. And while that has definitely played a role, it's not really that abundant. I would be disingenuous if I described myself as a computer hacker. I'm not. I was really more of a computer engineer. I could definitely do wonderful jobs with design specifications, with design to test methodology, with all of the program management, etc. I loved understanding all the details of different microprocessors, etc. at one period of time, but I would not really be a hacker. I mean, I can hack if I need to, but it's not really my thing. Anyways, for the videos, we usually live stream on Twitch, and if it's working, YouTube, although it doesn't always work. We've had 2 of our channels struck on YouTube, and the reasons for our channel strikes are because we talk openly, honestly, and bluntly about the total number of fatal drug overdoses, of drugs, which resulted in deaths in the United States of America, and it is an obscene number. It is, at least last year, was 5 times higher than the baseline, and that year is actually lower than the previous 2 years. That's how bad it is still right now. And because most of these overdoses are not elderly people, the majority anyways, they're teenagers, 20s, 30-year-olds, early 40s, it has had a dramatic impact on life expectancy, because life expectancy is simply calculated per year as the average age of people that died in that year. And this drop in life expectancy is not being called out by anyone in any health institute right now, unless they are to incorrectly say that it's because of bad vaccines or because of a deadly novel virus made in China or by Fauci. They are all idiots, or they are all lying. It's one or the other. I'm not really sure which one it is, but they are all lying. And because we are highlighting that, and we're saying that one of the main justifications for a lot of these countermeasures needs to be struck out, we get channel strikes. Imagine that. Simply by highlighting that the main driver of life expectancy drops. Because when 1 out of every 30 deaths of all people dying in the United States of America, any age group, I should say, of all age groups overall, total, right, is someone in their teens, 20s, or 30s dying of a drug overdose. These numbers have vastly exceeded any world war that the United States has entered. And to say that that would not have a dramatic impact on life expectancy calculations is, it's just wrong. It does have an impact. And those excess deaths above and beyond baseline have been used also disingenuously to suggest we've had incredibly high numbers of people dying from COVID, which the current HHS Secretary in the United States, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., is blaming on, what's he blaming it on right now? Chronic illnesses, because everyone has their 3.76 or whatever chronic illnesses or something like that. It's maddening. Anyways, YouTube, we get channel strikes. We also broadcast on Rumble, which you don't always get notifications for. Our Rumble views continue to go down. We also broadcast on BitChute, and BitChute has always worked for me. They've never let me down, but oh man, they have some. All I can say is look at some of the T-shirts that you can buy off of BitChute, and it's so unnecessary. But that's one of the only platforms that always works. So because I post videos there, I'm sure I get associated with the crazy T-shirts that they sell. Say no more. And Odyssey, which I get at least 3 views a month on Odyssey. Well, we get more than that, but it's not many. But the high growth platform is actually gigaohm.biological.com. As a matter of fact, if we just open up here, let's just go to GIGA 08. No, wait. I'm sorry. Stream STREAM dot gigaohm GIGAOHM dot bio. Here it is. It's not the fanciest landing page. Do you need to log in? Discover. Just click on Discover, and you can view Jonathan Cooey's videos, and you can view my videos. I've been uploading my videos, or sometimes video shorts, as well as shared videos on here. There's no app, unfortunately, but this is Jonathan Cooey's own server. I of the money that we have here, we make a small contribution a month to help pay for some of those costs. You can download the videos and do what you want from here. But this platform does have growth. We may actually, or Jonathan may actually need to get a couple of extra resources assigned to this server, which is in the cloud somewhere. All of those levels of abstraction. Who knows where these things are actually hosted anymore? I'm actually old enough that I remember a time where I could just set up and run my own HTTP server, but not anymore. Okay, so that's the introduction to the show. This looks like episode 1305. We cover a lot of, again, science, history, etc., but mostly trying to understand the biggest issues of our time. Pragmatic issues, realistic issues. I'm not sure if this program is really one that would be for conservatives or liberals, to be honest with you. I broadcast out of the United States of America. I love my country. I should say I love the concept, the abstraction of my country. I love the country that I thought it was when I was growing up. And that country is still alive somehow. But it's not alive in Washington, D.C., and it's not alive with the current government, at least not, I don't think most of it anyways. There may be a few good eggs in there. I don't know, but it is in a very bad state right now. But that said, I remember hearing this somewhere, and this may be true for people of other faiths, but I'm a Christian first, I'm an American second, so, never lose track of that. The world is not lost. It's not as if there's no reason to live anymore if the United States falls apart, although I will work for that. But I'm working for this ideal model. I'm not just working for any country. And if the country has to be one that goes against my core beliefs, well, I don't know how to reconcile that. We'll have to deal with that at some time. Move? I hope not. I have roots in this country that go back to the beginning of the country itself. I don't want to go anywhere. And I want the other people here to continue to join me on that. And I am heartbroken to see all the hatred, all the division, all the finger pointing, all of the look at what so-and-so said today. I don't mean scientifically, okay? Like if there's a show out there where they're continuing to misuse numbers of I should say misattribute deaths, well, I don't even know how that's a political thing, right? If you want to say life expectancy drops in the United States in 2022, 23, and 24 were because of a lab virus and not because of a drug overdose epidemic, well, then you're wrong. I mean, is that a left, a right, a pro-Trump, an anti-Trump, a whatever, a progressive, a conservative thing? I don't think so. It's just a statement. It's just a statement. So in those cases, yeah, but, so-and-so, thinks someone's being mean. I don't know. I'm just not getting into any of that. I'm not feeding that. I'm not taking that bait. Whatever, if anything, if someone is just so upset that, they can't think anymore, they can't sleep, what can I do? What can I say? Seriously, what can I say? What can we do to say, look, okay, you don't like the president. Guess what? Presidents don't live forever. Just calm down a little bit. No matter who you are, you can have a bad boss once in a while. It's going to happen. Grow up. What can we do to make, just to get by, because one way or the other, we're all, if Americans, we're in this together. And although I believe in competition with other countries, I hope people in other countries have a same feeling about putting their family, their community, and their nations first, by doing this, by everyone sort of focusing on what's closest first, physically anyways. Usually the better things tend to happen, at least on a bigger and bigger scale. But when you invert the priorities, for example, one of the priorities, if you put country over your religion, it's just one of those little things. If you put your neighbors over your own family, if you have people in another country over your own town, is that really a good thing? If everything in your own town is perfect, that's wonderful. Everyone's taken care of. Everyone's got good food, and health is good and prosperous. And if you got extra to spare, if everyone just has extra time on their hands, let's just go help someone else. That's fine. But most people are not in that situation. So today's show is a bit windy. I did a little bit longer intro than normal, a little bit windy. I don't even know how to summarize it. And when I have a show like this, I just throw a whole bunch of things into the title. To review, okay, if you watch a show like mine, you are probably someone who is, at the very best, very least, minimum, somewhat skeptical about what happened in the United States of America on September 11th in the year 2001. Something did happen. Who was responsible? What was the plan? What was the plan on a big scale? What were the things that were happening beforehand where we all could see that something big was about to happen? What happened afterwards? What seemed to be knee-jerk reactions? What seemed to be well-planned reactions as if everything did go according to plan? And what are the impacts on these things 10, 20, 25 years later? How long ahead before 9/11, September 11th, 2001, could you see suggestions that something was going to happen? I've developed a hypothesis that I am sure is not 100% correct. I'm not saying it's 100% correct. However, I believe that this hypothesis has more correctness to it regarding September 11th, 2001 than just about any other hypothesis I've seen floated out there. And mostly because it definitely factors in key pieces of evidence that for some reason every other outlet ignores or researcher ignores, either because they are supposed to ignore them or because they haven't had the idea to look. Now, please, I'm not an expert history researcher on all topics. I'm not. I don't ever plan to be. I don't pretend to be, and I'm not here to convince you that I'm an expert on all things historic. Not just going to throw some, Jeopardy topic out there, and I'm going to have a whole bunch of answers to it and amaze you because I'm just so smart and know everything. No, I don't. I'm an analyst. As an analyst, I realize that there are times you need to learn new things rapidly and quickly, and you need to apply models to things because you can't know everything. Sometimes you just need to come up with a little bit of a judgment quickly to help someone else make a decision or at least improve their odds of making a better decision. That's one of the things analysts need to do. If you're working as a competitive intelligence analyst for a company, someone would say, hey, the competitor company XYZ, well, they just announced that they're buying this 5-person startup company in Quebec, and they work on a piece of software that does this. Obviously, that little startup thing probably only has like 20 customers or no customers, or they have a couple of $2 a month subscribers through PayPal or something like that. Most people never would have heard of them, so we would have maybe an afternoon or 3 hours to get the basics of some company we never heard of, and then help with a press release statement, something like that. So our company says that we are not worried about XYZ, or help with the press release statement that would then go out to sales personnel. This is what you should tell your potential clients should they bring up an observation that XYZ bought that little startup company in Quebec or whatever. And it could have been wrong. But, it's definitely going to be something more than we could have gotten out of the newspapers. Anyways, regarding September 11th, 2001, there is a Mount Everest pile of evidence that there was a plan, there was a projection of a large biological terror attack in the United States of America in a major U.S. metropolitan center, almost certainly New York City. And it was going to be sometime in the later fall of 2001, probably Thanksgiving. Something where there would have been crowds outside, and a situation where there would have been mass hysteria should there be some crop dusters. By the way, the hijackers all trained on crop dusters. This explains why they trained on crop dusters. This explains why they wanted us to know they trained on crop dusters, right? That all was planned. Anyways, if crop dusters were used to drop some type of agent on the crowds and cause hysteria, probably would have been some sort of weaponized anthrax or anthrax powder, anthrax spores, which it's not very easy to just, concentrate anthrax and drop it out of a plane. Usually it would just fall like a pile of sod, thud, down into one spot where you got a few unlucky people. It's not going to distribute over a cloud, such as you shaking a big bag of baking powder over them. So there's a lot of technology that actually goes into this stuff. But anyways, that probably was that was definitely being planned. You could just see the projections all over the place, all over the media, congressional meetings, books. We went through piles of books, Cobra Event and Germs, and all of the authors that are still involved today regarding COVID-19. And why would something like that be planned? Why would it be done? Well, if you can scare enough people, you can then create an emergency scenario where you have to approve a new generation of an anthrax vaccine to protect the troops, to protect the military. Because the current anthrax vaccine at the time, is again, this is year 2001, was made at a factory that had contamination problems. It was a little bit dirty. And, they couldn't make it fast enough. There were a litany of reasons why they were having problems. And everyone wanted, I shouldn't say everyone, but people in this vaccine industry and the Human Genome Project and so on, they wanted to get to the next stage of that project, which was to be rolling out gene therapy, rolling out some type of transfection. Watch Jonathan Cooey to learn more about that. And the only population that you could effectively say, you got to take this in the year 2001, and by the way, also had monitoring, would have been the United States military. What better reason to keep the United States military around, even though we were already entering an era where traditional warfare is obviously going to be somewhat of a thing of the past, than to have troops of across the population that you could monitor from the age that they're enlisted to their death and give them experimental gene therapy. What a beautiful thing. That's the hypothesis. And you could see that on September 11th, 2001, I believe a preemptive action was done to destroy some of the materials which were going to be used to stage that event. Now, this may sound like me putting some sort of, something wonderful happened then. Not necessarily. Thousands of people did die on September 11th, 2001. It's possible that in the other scenario, thousands of people would have died. Maybe more. Maybe less even. We don't know. But anyways, it's nothing to celebrate. If we are in a country that ever since 2001 has been in a state where the government's willing to kill a few thousand Americans in order to advance the Human Genome Project, that's a bad starting point. And if the actions of September 11th, 2001 were perhaps done to preempt some of that, that means that we have conflicts with the United States that are so bad that we have thousands of people being killed at a time in order to control who's in charge of the Human Genome Project. That is not a very good scenario. I certainly don't think that's the United States of America that people before me and my family trees would have said, hey, that's something worth fighting for. That's sad. That's awful. That's shitty. That's just really awful. But it is a spin on September 11th, 2001 that for some reason no one has been able to capture. And it for those who say you got to follow the money, you got to follow the money in order for things to make sense. Well, if an experimental test monkey is worth $50,000 that can be thrown into the incinerator after it's used for one-time transfection, how much is a human worth? $500,000, $1 million, $10 million a pop? The value of the current United States population in terms, if you would just do the math of, let's just say, accidental death from wrong prescriptions or from medical malpractice, is in the thousands of trillions of dollars. It is the most valuable thing in the United States. So, if someone wants to say, you got to follow the money, it's George Bush's uncle made a couple $1 million by shorting the stock market, and that's why 9/11 happened. Ho, 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 I'm Corbett, I'm so smart and bald. He's full of shit. It's wrong. No. We are talking about thousands of trillions of dollars here. This is the real money. So, although it may not sound like as sexy as inside stock trading, which, suggests some people might have known something, that's not really the story. The story is the Human Genome Project. The story is taking control of the evolution of the human species. It's not, which is all the money you can imagine. It's immortality. It is evolution itself. That's what this war is about. And it's been ongoing for a long time. It kind of started really with 1945 and the Manhattan Project. And it's been ongoing, and it's still ongoing. We're still fighting it. Anyways, this hypothesis that I have does cover all of these things. And a lot of other approaches simply don't. They miss out on most of this stuff. I grabbed a notebook here from the dump, from the transfer station. Sometimes people just leave new notebooks there, and I thought it had a lot of blank pages, and I'm actually finding some things taped inside. So it's not quite as blank as I thought. But anyways, I think this page may do. This first page, that's pretty good. We are not against human genetic research. I'm not even against the potential value someday of transfection or gene therapy. I don't know. The only thing I call for is for things to be done openly and transparently. That's it. And keeping things above board. That's all. Is that really too much to ask? Obviously, it is too much to ask because of the level of censorship that we have here. But that's our 9/11 narrative in a nutshell. And many of the people who were on the stage, were controlling the narrative, were writing the books, etc., in an event that happened 20 years later, almost, COVID-19, 9/11, an event that happened where, by the way, for 9/11, 1 year after September 11th, 2001, it would have been September 11th, 2002, of course. That is approximately the date that there would have been a zoonotic event which resulted in the creation of a virus which spread around Asia and then actually led to SARS 2003 or SARS-CoV-1. SARS-CoV-1 had a super spreader event in Hong Kong at a hotel in room 911. So you'll find a lot of interesting 9/11 mentions. Oh, yes, and then there was this movie Contagion, which almost perfectly predicted the narrative of COVID-19. And the movie Contagion premiered on September 11th, 2011, exactly 10 years to the day after 9/11. So I think there's been some signaling that these things have been connected. But anyways, many of the people on the stage controlling the narrative, scientists, etc., writing books with COVID-19 were also the same people there for September 11th, 2001. And some names that people don't know that are there very often. One of those names is Robert Malone, Dr. Robert Wallace Malone. And I could not have made all the progress that I have made without the existence of Dr. Robert Wallace Malone. Born 1960, 1961. Dr. Wallace Malone of BARDA, Dr. Robert Malone, who worked with a company called Vical Corporation, VICAL. Robert Malone, whose name was on a paper with a few other scientists regarding the use of naked DNA or injection of naked DNA into, I don't know if it was in vitro, in vivo, and actually seeing proteins being expressed. In other words, the possibility of using organisms to express specific types of proteins and have immunogenic responses. Maybe even the proteins themselves could be antibodies. You could actually use an animal to give it some software or a code, a blueprint of what what an antigen would look like, and the animal would then make its own antigens, express its own antigen proteins, and then make antibodies to those antigens, which is basically what the mRNA vaccine was. But anyways, Robert Malone has been all over the place. His CV, his resume is fascinating. And there is no doubt that Dr. Robert Wallace Malone was working at a research center called the Windber Cancer Research Center, Breast Cancer Research Center, in a little area of Pennsylvania near the city of Johnstown, starting there in the year 2000, and his tenure there ended abruptly just after September 11th, 2001. And this center, which had been around for at least 80, 90 years, mostly was for small regional hospital and for hospice care. This center then was transitioned into a state-of-the-art cancer research center around 1998, 1999. It was started to get a little bit of money beforehand. And for whatever reason, Robert Malone, who is not from Pennsylvania, was called in to set up a lot of the IT infrastructure, management, and the machines, along with his wife, Jill Glasspool Malone, of this center. And this center, this Windber Cancer Center, is the only cancer research center that has a special, Center of Excellence, a relationship with the United States Army and the United States Army's Walter Reed Hospital in Maryland. So if Walter Reed, the main hospital, a research hospital of the U.S. Army, is to do any research or any data collection, maybe, for example, if the U.S. military is being used for an experimental gene therapy vaccine after a large-scale biological terror attack in a major U.S. metropolitan center, the one place that would get information about how it's going in the U.S. military would have been Windber. So Robert Malone, who had already worked on transfection, already worked on naked DNA, already worked with a company called Vical, which was making products which would have been used and were already being evaluated for anthrax vaccines by a future Robert Malone business partner, Darrell Galloway. It just makes sense that Robert Malone might have been one of the people who would have been called in and positioned to set up the IT infrastructure at this center. And his abrupt departure from the center after September 11, 2001, to me, one likely possibility is that the events of September 11, 2001 were not expected. And as we can see, although some people still tried it, there was no rollout of gene therapy anthrax vaccines. Didn't happen. And I think it didn't happen because of 9/11. So we focus a lot on this small cancer center in Windber, Pennsylvania, which, noteworthy, is only 10 miles away. Only 10 miles away from one of the highest points in the state of Pennsylvania. And believe it or not, one of the highest points in the state of Pennsylvania is where Flight 93 crashed. Look at it on an elevation map. It's really cool. If you actually look at the elevation map, you'll see that the Flight 93 crash site is about 750 to 800 meters above sea level, and the highest point in the entire state of Pennsylvania, I might have said Massachusetts before, I'm sorry, I have a little bit of dyslexia, is only about 900 meters. In other words, Flight 93 is almost a perfect spot to put a radio tower or some other type of infrastructure which needs to be at a peak. Or if someone wanted to provide some sort of distraction on the date of September 11th, 2001, I don't know, that would have been a good area. It was a junkyard. It wasn't being used for anything else. I don't know. What I do know is that if you look at all the pictures, you will be convinced that a plane did not crash there on September 11th, 2001. I'm not saying that Flight 93 didn't exist or didn't crash. All I'm saying is that it did not crash there. It did not. And I have other evidence which has been collected, made available. Again, for some reason, no one seems to want to find this stuff interesting or want to share it. That the main evidence that has been used to suggest that Flight 93 crashed where it did was mail, United States mail, which was blowing all over the field and even found in the town. And it just so happens that there was a 6-hour drive from that location to Newark Airport. And 10 to 12 hours before the crash of Flight 93, there was a fire at Newark Airport in the post office where a whole bunch of mail disappeared, which is basically the mail that they found there. So there's even evidence that makes it obvious that it was a staged crash there. Plane might have crashed somewhere else. I don't know. I haven't called any of the passengers or pilots or their families. You don't need to. No plane crashed there. It crashed somewhere else maybe. I don't know. I don't think my story mostly relies on the fact that why did anything real or staged happen there 10 miles away from this cancer research center in Windber, Pennsylvania on September 11th, 2001, the Flight 93 crash. It doesn't really matter to me whether or not it was a real crash or a staged crash. But the fact that it also looks staged is particularly interesting to me. So continuing on, Robert Wallace's Malone role in this center is very important. So we have, let's just go to the page here, and I'm going to scoot off to the side a little bit. So if you go to Houstonic.live or Houstonic.live, let's see, we are going to want to click on the W's, and under the W's is the Windber Research Center, UVW, Windber Medical Center 2001, which is approximately things related to this Windber Research Center a little before 2001, of the year 2001, and a few years afterwards, okay? It is the rural area, Somerset, Pennsylvania. And this center has been around for a long time, so I don't have the full history of the Windber Research Center. But what we do have is evidence that the center was being re-envisioned starting around 1997, 1998, with a focus on breast cancer research, which previously it was not. The local United States congressional representative for this region of Pennsylvania is a man named John Murtha. He was in the United States military, and I'm going to open up John Murtha's page here. Control C. John Murtha died in 2010, and you can read his congressional, the 142 pages of congressional statements, memorials, etc. for John Murtha, and there he is right there, of course, is a black and white photo. This was the memorial addresses and other tributes held in the United States House of Representatives for John P. Murtha, late representative from the state of Pennsylvania, and this was written in 2010, I believe. Now, Murtha was a Democrat. He was seen by some as a centrist Democrat. Some see him as a liberal who was pro-military. It's hard to characterize him. John Murtha got a lot of credibility because he got money for the military. So he was, at least in that sense, pro-military. If the military contractors needed money, they could be sure that Murtha would get money earmarked. And he was in the service. In fact, he is the first person to serve in the United States government who is also a veteran of Vietnam. Now, he served in Vietnam. He has 2 Purple Hearts, But there's questions. Some have wondered if the Purple Hearts are him banging his head on the header of a low ceiling. It's, I don't want to eagerly jump on the swift boat bandwagon of Senator John Kerry of the state of Massachusetts. But there's questions about how serious and how life-threatening his service was. If someone even worked in a soup kitchen in an area of combat, I think they deserve some recognition. But it's possible that Murtha's recognitions were a little hyped up. But we'll just leave it at that. Anyways, the fact that he was in Vietnam and a veteran and had 2 Purple Hearts made it so that he did find a way to get into government. Now, when he first became a United States representative, he did so because I think, although the local guy won, I think this was in the 1970s. Matter of fact, you can go to John Murtha's page. He has a pretty extensive Wikipedia page. John Murtha. And the reason why we're talking about John Murtha, by the way, why I made this jump, is John Murtha got the money for this cancer research center. Matter of fact, it became known as the Joyce Murtha Breast Cancer Research Center, named in honor of the wife of John Murtha, Representative Murtha, Murtha. So he got the money, and it became known as the Murtha Center. The local airport's the Murtha Airport in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. So he played a large role in this little research, in this little building that was doing hospice care for 80, 90 years for people in coal mining, and its transition to a breast cancer center of excellence for the United States military. It's Murtha. Let's see, his early political career. Murtha was elected to the 72nd Legislative District in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives. That's a state-level house. In a special election in May 20th, 1969. Let's see here. The election was triggered by the death of Representative Edward McNally, who died in November of 1968. It's interesting. So the local election, he got in because the local guy died of a heart attack 12 days after he won. Now, he was in his early 70s, but make note. I'm just going to say Murtha is very close with Hillary Clinton. Not that you can draw whatever conclusions you want from that, but you'll notice that a lot of people die at very opportune times when it comes time for Murtha needing to get into a certain political office, okay? So then Murtha was elected to represent the 72nd Legislative District in Pennsylvania, in the House of Reps, in a special election on May. No, I already read that, excuse me. Then Congressman Saylor, Saylor, died in October of 1973, 9 months into his 13th term. And then he jumped to a special election in the 12th District, and then I think... and I believe he won. In February 1974, a special election, which took place during the burgeoning Watergate scandal, Murtha defeated one of Saylor's former aides, Harry Fox, by only 242 votes, and was sworn in on February 20th, 1974. He defeated Fox for a full term by a significantly wider margin in the general election that November, and was reelected 17 times. So he got into the state-level role by somebody dying, and then he got into the federal role by somebody dying. And I'm not saying that he did anything. I'm just saying, there's a lot of bad hearts, a lot of unlucky people when it comes to Murtha. Fortunately, maybe he saved some lives with the breast cancer research center. Who knows? So he faced Murtha faced some primary challenges in 1982, 1990, again in 2002. The 1982 challenge occurred when Republican-controlled state legislator, remember, Pennsylvania tends to lean conservative, took advantage of Murtha's connection to Abscam and incorporated most of the district. So he did some redistricting, but he still wound up winning one way or the other. In 2002, Murtha managed Nancy Pelosi's campaign to become the House Minority Whip, where she defeated Steny Hoyer. So somehow Murtha moved up rapidly. He went from being a state level rep to a federal rep. He was accused of a scandal, and now he's helping Nancy Pelosi. But also because he had all of these medals, these decorations from his service, he was seen as pro-military or military-friendly. All right? So a lot of people think that Murtha was a Republican because he did spend a lot of time focused on U.S. military service. I don't know him well enough. I haven't researched well enough to have any personal opinion on it, but it is true that he did earmark a lot of money, and he earmarked a lot of money for things to come back to his particular district, which wasn't exactly a district of a lot of money. The main city in his district in that area of Pennsylvania is the city of Johnstown, which is one of the 4 U.S. cities which has had the largest percentage of population loss over the last 40 years. So it's a catastrophe what has happened in the city of Johnstown. It's still there, but I think it's lost like 60 or 70% of its population from its peak. And what's there is, I'm sure there's wonderful people there. I grew up in the city of Bridgeport, so I don't mean to besmirch any city that has gone downhill. Bridgeport lost, 20, 30, 40% of its populations. Houses have burned down. There's vacant lots. I get it. I'm very sympathetic, okay? But Johnstown's a rough place. Don't even need to get into the politics of why all these things have happened. Going to Murtha's memorial, okay, there is a lot written in here on, of course, his early service, things that he did, his focus. He had a little bit of a populist twist, like I said, centrist-ish, I don't know how to best describe it. If a populist is just a person who's very liberal, who doesn't mind spending money on anything and everything, does that really make someone a populist? I don't know. Military leadership. He got a lot of credit, by the way, for being one of the first people to call for getting out of Iraq. Another person who was also there for that call in 2005 was a senator from Nevada named Harry Reid. Okay, so let's go to the let's read the section in here on his interest in health. I might have missed a section here. Let me go back up a little bit. Health care leadership. I'm going to zoom in a little. Again, this is from the, he died in 2010, the memorial of John Murtha, who is the namesake of this Windber Breast Cancer Research Center. Excuse me. So, during his time in office, during John Murtha's time in office, Congressman Murtha expanded medical research and improved access to preventive medicine and quality of health care. In 1990, Congressman Murtha worked with Congressman Bill Young of Florida to create the Department of Defense Marrow Donor Program. Right there, holy cow. You talk about something where they are definitely testing genetics and genetic compatibility, bone marrow donor. That's a red flag right there. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that there could be multiple reasons to pursue that and support that. That's all I'm saying. If someone has a disease, which I guess could be cured with a bone marrow transplant, and if someone is a willing donor, oh, this is fantastic. If we have the science to be able to help, sign me up. However, if it's also being prioritized over other illnesses and addictions and everything else, because behind the scenes a whole lot of data is being gathered from it, then I don't think we're really on the level about how we should be addressing this versus the totality of health challenges which face our community, including a below replacement birth rate There's a lot of things that we should be talking about here. But just wanted to put that one out there. So the Department of Defense Marrow Donor Program later became the National Marrow Donor Program. So major big red flag here. This has Human Genome Project. I know we use that word loosely, but connections. In 1991, John Murtha, along with Senator Jay Rockefeller of West Virginia, introduced the Coal Industry Retiree Health Benefit Act, also known as the Coal Act. This bill, which was ultimately incorporated into the Energy Policy Act of 1992, established the United Mine Workers of America, the UMWA, 1992 benefit plan. The plan provides health insurance benefits to retired and disabled miners and their spouses. After establishment of the benefit plan, Congressman Murtha fought for the continued solvency of the fund when it was in danger of bankruptcy. John Murtha was also a staunch supporter of the Black Lung Benefits Program. He helped pass the legislation that enabled miners who worked underground for 25 years to automatically qualify for black lung benefits. He also directed funding for research on lung disease and the development of artificial lung to help miners suffering with black lung disease, and pressed for passage of legislation to make dust monitors in mines tamper-proof. Now, you could be conspiratorial and think that there's something here, some data that could be used to also help, the spread of respiratory diseases or the creation of a perception of a respiratory disease. You feel free to think that, but there's nothing readily on the surface to suggest that is the case. It might be, but I'm not suggesting it, and I'm not even contemplating it at this point in time. Continuing on, in 1992, Congressman Murtha helped create the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Programs, the CDMRP, within the Department of Defense to manage funding for the research of diseases and illnesses prevalent in the military. And this is where we have to do a stop. CDMRP. I've seen that acronym before. So Murtha, I can't find an article to say which other congressmen or senators were involved in this, but this is a big deal. I will reread the sentence. In 1992, Congressman Murtha helped create the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Programs, CDMRP, within the Department of Defense to manage funding for the research of diseases and illnesses prevalent in the military. So, starting slowly in 1992, this CDMRP, which might have been known as something else at the time, it started with like $20 million. And right now in 2022, it's $1.5 billion. This is United States Department of Defense money. $1.5 billion relative to $800 billion or whatever it is I know it's not even 1%, really. That's a fair statement. However, it's still a lot of money, and interesting things could be done there versus within the National Institutes of Health. And if you don't think this is relevant, let me pull up an article here. Okay. This is from March 28th, 2025. So this is the beginning of the Trump administration. And this is from the Cancer Letter. Breast cancer activists in the 1990s got DoD to fund cancer research. Now that program has been gutted. And it talks about, in 1991, the National Breast Cancer Coalition demanded that the federal government spend $300 million more on breast cancer research. This push resulted in the creation of the Department of Defense Congressionally Directed Medical Research Program, or the DoD CDMRP, which has brought in the 34 other diseases with a fiscal year 2024 budget of $1.5 billion. Now, 33 years later, again, this article is only 2 months ago. 33 years later, through the continuing resolution passed on March 14th, I guess that would be 2025, funding for CDMRP was cut by 57% compared to fiscal year 2024 levels. So this pile of money in the United States military, which is, $1 billion, $1.5 billion, is a big enough topic that press outlets have been talking about it and viewing it as the current U.S. President Trump, who's I'm disappointed with a lot of things, but viewing it as him cutting that, well, I don't know. He seems to be stocking the FDA and CBER and the National Institutes of Health and everything else with people that are traitors. So I'm not viewing this necessarily in isolation as a step in the right direction. But it's interesting that this is not just some buried topic from an article written 33-something years ago or related to a guy that died 15 years ago. It's still in the news, and I never heard this phrase before. The CDMRP. Now, the Department of Defense has this page, the nationalhealthcouncil.org. Department of Defense Congressionally Directed Medical Research Programs. And this is a 2024 article. Introduction. The Department of Defense's Congressionally Directed Medical Research Programs, the CDMRP, were established in 1992 by Congress in response to a desire for more investment in biomedical research. In its 32-year history, the CDMRP has funded research into a plethora, of healthcare issues that impact the chronic illness community, there you go, including breast cancer, chronic pain management, epilepsy, melanoma, multiple sclerosis, etc. In fiscal year 2023, over 30 health conditions were examined within CDMRP. Since its creation, appropriations for CDMRP have grown, as have the number of conditions researched. In 1992, CDMRP was appropriated $25 million that year versus $1.55 billion for the year 2022. So it talks about its history, its creation in the 1990s, and what we'll say is that its creation is anchored and made possible by Mr. I love earmarks, and that is John Murtha. And the reason why this comes up is because it's breast cancer research, and sure enough, one of the first big appropriations for the CDMRP was the Windber Center. So there were other things as well, but a big pile of money went to this Windber Cancer Research Center, where Robert Malone did the setup in 2000 and 2001 with his wife, Jill Glasspool Malone. Now, there's 20 things I want to say here, so I'm not sure which one to bring up first. But if you think it doesn't matter, okay, if I go to my archive, no, not this, not Wikipedia, which is fine, but Houstonic is superior. If you go to Houstonic.live, and if you click on the M's, because we're going to be going to Robert Malone, okay, if you go to Robert Malone, and if you search for CDMRP, you will see that in the year 2012, Robert Malone was a chairperson and scientific reviewer for the Department of Defense, U.S. Army Medical Research and Material Command. That's for the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Programs, the CDMRP, Defense Medical Research Programs, or also known as the DMRDP. And this is the only person in my archive that has that that specific acronym. So Robert Malone, if you think that I'm drawing straws here, or I should say pulling strings, or I don't know what the phrase is. No, he is in this. He becomes a chairperson on it, and it's from this pile of money for the United States military that paid for this Windber Cancer Research Center initial funding, which I think was going to collect cancer data on the United States military, which they thought might be escalating in 2002 and onwards because of the use of an experimental gene therapy vaccine on the U.S. military after a large-scale biological terror attack at a major U.S. metropolitan center at the end of 2001, which led to the military having to go to war in an area of conflict where something like anthrax or smallpox was going to be a risk. All of the congressional hearings were held 98, 99, 2000, and early 2001. I'm effectively just saying what they said. This is exactly the narrative which was laid out by books, by congressional testimony, newspaper articles, C-SPAN, Times. It's all there. This is not a far-fetched theory. This is the actually abundantly documented fact that this is how it was going to go down. And here, 10 years after the fact, Robert Malone is still involved in this. Now it gets better. Think of all of the things, all of the different institutes in the United States of America, which could go for a little bit of extra money from the DOD for this congressionally directed medical research programs, the CDMRP. Think of all of the institutes, colleges, local places, other government institutions, nonprofits. I don't know, thousands. There must be thousands. Still here. I'm pulling up another window. This is an article from March 5th, 2011, which, by the way, is only a year before Robert Malone is a chairperson and a scientific reviewer on the congressionally directed medical research programs, okay? So fiscal year 2010, the CDMRP recommended proposals were announced. So there's a lot of proposals. I'm going to assume hundreds that come in, okay, every year for new ones. And they can't approve all of them. And I don't know what the criteria is. I don't know who's actually voting. Well, obviously, Robert Malone plays one of the roles. But a bunch of other people and who gets priority. And I know that there's probably tons of corruption. Maybe some of it's good. I don't know. But of the 7 new, how would you say, allocations or awards, investigator-initiated awards in 2010, number 6 was the detection of xenotropic Maurine leukemia retrovirus, virus-related virus, and Gulf War illness, role in pathogenesis or biomarker at the Whittemore Peterson Institute, and applied for and approved for Dr. Judy Mikovits. And award 7 is the XMRV and GWI, that's Gulf War illness, is there an association, by Richard Sutton at Yale University. So this little CDMRP thing I'd never heard of before, it's getting award. Now, 2011 is when the meltdown happened at the Whittemore Peterson Institute, where Judy Mikovits, she had her arrest. Her laptop was taken. They said that the data was dirty. There's a whole thing about it in a book, the book Plague, which I've started to cover. I've started to play the audiobook for Plague, where Judy Mikovits is recounting it. Now, a lot of the initial money for that institute did come from the Whittemore family, who have a ton of money. Some of it came from the state of Nevada. Senator Harry Reid of the state of Nevada. By the way, Harry Reid of the state of Nevada, good friends with John Murtha. And we're going to explore that more. Harry Reid is a big part of the why they got the Iran nuclear deal pushed through, being the senior Democrat in the United States Senate. So Judy Mikovits also had money appropriated from the CDMRP. And if there was a list of thousands of things on here, well, okay, everyone gets a few dollars. There's only 7, and in reality, 2 are XMRV. As a matter of fact, 5 is a preliminary trial of repetitive transcranial magnetic stimulation in Gulf War veterans with chronic multi-symptom illness at the VA Medical Center, Bronx, New York, under Julie Gollier. I could make a point that almost half of these, maybe even more than half, of these appropriations in 2011 are related to XMRV and Gulf War and Judy Mikovits. She's not just some woman in flip-flops. She knows what she's talking about. I'm not saying you believe she's telling you the truth. She's a big deal. Now, she's here in 2010, I think was the, the application, fiscal year 2010, and I believe she won the award. I don't know exactly how the payout works or how much the award was for, but it was approved. Robert Malone, in his CV, in his resume, talks about being a chairperson and a scientific reviewer on the U.S. Army Research and Material Command, the DoD, U.S. Army Medical Research and Material Command for the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Programs, the CDMRP, for 2012. Now, when it comes to these things, you could say, I was on the board in 2012 because it was for the fiscal year 2013, or I was actually there in 2011 because it was for fiscal year 2012. I don't know, okay? You can play little games with this stuff. If the data is what it is, this does not mean that Robert Malone was a chairperson who approved the award for Judy Mikovits. It does suggest, though, that he came in right afterwards. Why? Because the Whittemore Peterson Institute was losing a few dollars? Because the whole scandal involving Judy Mikovits, there needed to be a recovery, and Robert Malone needed to get on the board of the CDMRP to redirect money to go somewhere else? I don't know the answer to that. But this is incredibly odd, and I do suspect that there is maybe not communication between Judy Mikovits and Robert Malone here, even though they're both connected with Bob Gallo since the 1990s or earlier. But it does suggest that there's something connected about this all the way back then. And we could go back before then as well. Okay. I got to clear my throat. 1 second. Okay, so let's continue. So going back a couple of steps here, going back to this Windber Center here. I think we'll have to go back to here. We see that the Windber Center is getting more money throughout 1997, 1998, and then in 1999, the Daily American, the local newspaper, reports that there's an outpouring of love for a Bosnian boy. So a boy is flown in from Bosnia. And, of course, there's the Bosnia and Herzegovina, the Serb versus Croat war. I do not understand that war at all. But I know that there's a story of Hillary Clinton going there. She was the first lady of the United States at the time. Bill Clinton is president. This is 96, 97, 98. And when she went there, one of the main people that supported her was the representative, the U.S. congressional representative from the state of Pennsylvania, John Murtha. And another guy who went with John Murtha sometimes is a man named Nick Jacobs, who became the director of this institute. So the institute, which isn't really set up, hardcore anyways, in 1999, seems to be part of, and again, I apologize, it's a crass way of saying it, but a PR stunt to show that they are there and they can help out kids who have a particular, medical condition. And there's something that just feels a little staged about this February 9th, 1999 event. Now, another thing that happened is not too far afterwards, okay, let's see, on December 3rd, 1999, suddenly a lot of money comes in. I mean, a lot of money comes in for the Windber Hospital. Now it's forming a cancer relationship partnership with Walter Reed. So it was being set up as a cancer center slowly for a few years. But now the CDMRP is announcing an additional $7.5 million grant from the Department of Defense to be used to establish a facility at the Windber Medical Center with all research, diagnostic, treatment, and modalities needed to mirror screening set up by Walter Reed. So the money comes because of some breast cancer survival story, which sounds a little bit made up to me. And they approved the whole thing in like 3 weeks. This is in December of 1999. It feels as though they are suddenly racing here. Now, it may have been the plan all along, but something happened chronologically a little bit before this, and that is that on September 17th, 1999, there was one of the most visible, recognized deaths of someone receiving experimental gene therapy, and that's Jesse Gelsinger. Jesse Gelsinger died on September 17th, 1999. It is now clear that this stuff is serious, and people are dying. People can die from gene therapy. And they're already planning to give it to the U.S. military after their large-scale biological terror attack. They're already planning that. As a matter of fact, they're already planning to use Vical technology, which also, coincidentally, is where Robert Malone worked. So Robert Malone is known as an expert on gene therapy transfection. He's known because he's part of the key patents at Vical Corporation. He's known because he becomes the whistleblower for the New York Times, I guess, regarding Jesse Gelsinger. And, of course, he's working in the laboratory of Bob Gallo in 96, 97, 98, 99. What a better person to pick from the U.S. population than someone who knows transfection, who has some expertise in computers, who knows how dangerous this stuff is because he was a whistleblower for Jesse Gelsinger. What better person to pick from the United States population to set up the IT infrastructure for the Windber Cancer Research Center in 99 and 2000, I should say in 2000, than Dr. Robert Wallace Malone. And he's going to be there full time. They even agreed to send his wife out there. Both of them sign up for the United States Uniformed Health Services and start setting up this cancer center. At least all of the IT infrastructure. This is where Robert Malone is working. And Robert Malone must have known that there was suddenly an urgency to get more infrastructure there set up as of December 3rd, 1999, because they realized that this stuff could potentially be fatal because of the death of Jesse Gelsinger. You don't want to just pick anybody out of the crowd. You want to find a scientist that knows transfection can kill. As a matter of fact, if Brett Weinstein or one of the other idiots, monsters, who has been doing podcasts for the last several years, and I could do almost everyone in the picture behind Jonathan Cooey, knew that transfection can kill people. It's done to animals in a laboratory before you throw them into the fire. It's not something you use as a therapeutic. It may be something that could be used as a therapeutic in a specific way going forward. It's possible. Maybe for some tumors or something, it's possible. But to use it as a vaccine right now is murderous or manslaughterish at the very least. This is why Robert Malone needed to be used for this role. Okay. Now, as the money is racing into the Windber Cancer Hospital, starting in 1999, again, it's approved rapidly by John Murtha. Okay, this is John Murtha right now. There's, of course, going to be a little bit of legal wrangling. You have building permits. You have all kinds of maybe state laws, federal laws, bureaucracies to deal with Washington, D.C. Knowledge sharing with the United States military. And you need to get it done before the fall of 2001. So John Murtha employs a local man who was also in the United States military. As a matter of fact, he was in the Air Force, technically speaking, for several years, but only as a lawyer. So he was a lawyer working in the Air Force, but he also lived in Johnstown. So he's in Murtha's neighborhood. And he just graduated from Georgetown. And this man's name was Richard Verma. Richard Verma was born in Canada, maybe. He could have been born in India. He might have been, I think he was born in Canada, and came to the United States when he was, 3 or 5 or something like that, and grew up in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, for his Indian family. Now, some of you know I've been talking a lot about Richard Verma lately, because Richard Verma went on to become ambassador to India. Richard Verma went on to work with Harry Reid. But here, Richard Verma is working in the offices of John Murtha, helping set up the Windber Cancer Research Center, using money from this Department of Defense, CDMRP, the Department of Defense Congressionally Directed Medical Research Program. Richard Verma is winning over favor here by working in the office of John Murtha, the local representative, as Murtha is getting money set aside for this cancer research center. But there needs to be urgency put on it, because with the death of Jesse Gelsinger in September of 1999, they now know that this stuff could kill a lot of people in the military. So they really need to put a lid on it. They really, keep it under wraps. They really need to make sure that the data collection is as secure as possible. No surprise, Bob Gallo of HIV went on to become one of the board members of the Internet 2 Consortium. This stuff was all done by design. And in fact, data links are a big part. And I don't think that there is a shared data link, a physical data link between this cancer center and Walter Reed. But fortunately, it's only 2 hours away. And if you could put a transmission tower on the tallest point between Windber and Walter Reed, it just happens to sit, I think, at the Flight 93 crash site. Isn't that interesting? What a wonderful reason to drop a missile there and then claim it as U.S. military property or something like that. Now we're talking. Now that's a reason to stage a crash there. Okay. So we got that taken care of here. We have the center being funded. We know that Robert Malone trains a local couple, I should say a Nigerian couple right off the boat from Nigeria to be experts on transfection. Here's the groundbreaking ceremony with John Murtha, Joyce Murtha there, Nick Jacobs, a couple other people from the military, etc. This happened in August 30th, 2000. So they are on express mode right now, trying to get this thing set up. Even Donna Shalala, the HHS secretary, is cruising through in November of 2000. And then eventually September 11th happens, and then everything's thrown out of whack. Eventually, though, things get back on the rails, but things were definitely thrown off. There was still an Iraq war, which, by the way, Murtha and also Senator Harry Reid did not like. They were two of the most foremost people in calling an end to it. So, after this happens, as I've said, first of all, I want to reiterate a few things here, okay? One, John Murtha is in Serbia and obviously developing a close relationship with Hillary Clinton at this time. Hillary Clinton knows that John Murtha, the Democrat, is one of the most important allies she will have in her career in having some respect with the United States military. I think some people in the military think that Murtha's full of shit, that his Purple Hearts might be faked, might be a little oopsies, paper cuts, hangnails, or something like that. I think people have questions, but they also know that Murtha gets money. So, look, you have to give a little, take a little, etc. Hillary Clinton knows that Murtha is an important person in this, in her ability to have some credibility with the military. And to be honest, although the military, they may not have loved Clinton, they're really not supposed to love or hate anyone. They're supposed to follow orders. But I don't think that they necessarily had a strongly antagonistic feeling towards the Clintons either, which is, it's noteworthy. And I think some of that came from the reputation offered by Murtha, who supported the Clintons a lot. He even supported Hillary Clinton when she ran for president over Barack Obama. So, Murtha. Then 9/11 happens. Richard Verma is providing key assistance in helping set up this cancer research center before 9/11. And then his job is done. Richard Verma, then, I think it's because of his relationship with John Murtha, then gets an opportunity to move a level up. And he becomes the senior foreign relations advisor to United States Senator Harry Reid after 9/11. In case, for those of you who you can't picture it, let me open up the page here. UVWVE, Richard Verma, VER. It's right in front of me. I know it is. Richard Verma, and most of this stuff, by the way, has been scrubbed from the newspapers. So Richard Verma then goes to the offices of Harry Reid, starting in 2002 as a senior advisor. He's only 38 years old or something like that. Very interesting. He goes to the offices of Harry Reid. Why is that so interesting? Well, first off, Harry Reid is the person seen as most responsible for the India nuclear deal. Harry Reid plays a huge role on the Iran nuclear deal. As a matter of fact, Richard Verma then goes on to work in the Hillary Clinton State Department and is actually credited with one of the main people working with the United States Congress to push through the Iran nuclear deal. So he goes from getting some money and making sure everything's paid off for the breast cancer research center, which of course is tangentially connected to the Human Genome Project, and then he's off working nuclear deals. Almost as if the nuclear power in the future is going to be needed to drive the AI data centers, which the future of the Human Genome Project relies on. It's not really about nuclear weapons. That's not the truth. It is about national security, but just not in a way anyone is willing to talk about it. It is interesting because after he goes to work with Harry Reid for a while, Harry Reid has 4 sons, and they all work in the law offices or had worked in the law offices of one of the richest families in the state of Nevada, and that's the family of Frank Whittemore, the wife of Annette Whittemore. As a matter of fact, I even think it's possible that through some series of dinners, Richard Verma, some other people, connections were made, and I don't know whose idea it was, but they realized, you know what, Annette Whittemore, the wife of this power couple that is hiring all the sons of Harry Reid, she just happens to be one of the children of this Dr. Quincy Fortier, a man who they did a movie about in 2020 called Baby God, a man that probably had at a minimum several hundred children. He was inseminating women all kinds of different ways through his practice. Possibly thousands. If there was ever a person you would want to pick from the general U.S. population to blame chronic fatigue on, and then maybe even use as a use case or to get more data about genetic causes of disease or chronic fatigue or autism or something else, it would be someone in that family tree. And it just so happens that Annette Whittemore has a daughter who has chronic fatigue. And it just so happens that one day, while being at a bar out in California, a friend of Annette Whittemore bumps into Judy Mikovits. And it just so happens that then Judy Mikovits then becomes the senior scientist at the Whittemore Peterson Institute. And then it just so happens that Judy Mikovits becomes one of the several people that has funds approved for her in the year 2010 for the Whittemore Peterson Institute, which is getting money from this congressionally designated, I always forget it, medical research program, which was set up by John Murtha of Pennsylvania and heavily advised by Richard Verma. Richard Verma, the fact that Richard Verma popped up in a photo in the late 2019 interviewing Piper Stover, a woman who was assigned to disrupt Jonathan Cooey, made me wonder, who is this guy? Why is his Wikipedia so short? Why has everything about him in Ancestry.com and U.S. newspapers been deleted for at least a 10-year period? How can you be the chief foreign strategist of Harry Reid and have no newspaper articles about you for 10 years? He was also on the panel that, with respect to the START treaty with respect to Russia, and was appointed by Hillary Clinton in her State Department to lead the discussions within Congress regarding getting the Iran nuclear deal done. He then goes on to become ambassador to India. And wouldn't you know, after he becomes ambassador to India, I mean, this stuff is just hilarious, okay? Let's see, where is it? Oh, yeah, he's in the WikiLeaks emails. Richard Verma is all over the Hillary Clinton emails. You'll see it as Verma hyphen or comma Richard. He sends emails to H. Now, as much as I'd like to think it's sending emails to HughSatonic.live, which maybe he will someday, and then Uma Abedin and Jacob Sullivan, no, he's like this with Hillary Clinton, and he has been since the 1990s when he became an advisor for John Murtha to help with the CDMRP, the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Program, getting money for the Windber Cancer Center, which was going to be collecting cancer data on the U.S. military through Walter Reed. Should an experimental gene therapy anthrax vaccine get rolled out from Vical Corporation, a company started by an Indian man, from a technology from another person from India, interestingly enough, Inder Verma, all part of the Jesse Gelsinger cover-up. But, and guess what? Here we are. He's involved in all the sanctions, and it was this interesting porty. Oh, here's Richard Verma getting his big, long goodbye from Hillary Clinton. Now, Richard Verma did go on to become the Secretary of State, the first Indian man of Indian ethnicity to become Secretary of State, or I should say ambassador to India for the United States. India actually, Prime Minister Modi was actually, I found in some places, unsatisfied. He didn't want an Indian man to be the ambassador to India. Now, the first pick under the Obama administration for the role of ambassador to India was not Richard Verma. It was another woman who was a career diplomat who lost the job because of Nannygate. That's right. Just like Murtha got into his political positions because of people dying, just like Hillary Clinton became senator because JFK Jr. died in a plane crash. Oh, that's right. She became a senator in the state that had 9/11. What are the odds, Hillary Clinton, And the other senator was Chuck Schumer. And Chuck Schumer, believe it or not, was actually bringing Wall Street money up to Rochester, New York before 9/11 for the company that Sasha Latipova works at. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. No, it's not just a coincidence. But anyways, then you have the Nannygate story. It's amazing how many conspiracies and people getting bumped out of office and deaths and plane crashes around Hillary Clinton and Murtha and Verma, as a matter of fact. Now, I'm not saying it's Verma doing it. I don't think he has a bone in his body. I'll bet you he has to hire someone to empty out the mousetraps, okay? I don't think he has that DNA. But he is working for him, okay? What I found crazy is here we are after Richard Verma starts. Oh, yeah, and by the way, he's sworn in as the ambassador to India by John Kerry. John Kerry, Swift Boat Kerry. It's Swift Boat Kerry, and then it's Bump Your Head on the Bunker, John Murtha. Two guys with a whole bunch of Purple Hearts, but not a lot of scars. Amazing how they work together. And Kerry is, I think, one of the main drivers of the Iran nuclear deal. The main drivers. And, of course, Verma works for him. But after this Iran nuclear deal is getting set up, then India suddenly agrees to buy a bunch of military equipment from the United States. As a matter of fact, you'll find articles of Hillary Clinton going all in with India. Hillary Clinton is all in with India, actually ever since 2000, I think. But definitely 2015. It's no question. It was Hillary Clinton and her investments. But there's also these weird articles like the Huffington Post. Let's see, 2019? This is 2015. India strikes port deal with Iran despite American objection. So after the Iran nuclear deal, this is odd. Suddenly, India wants to build the ports for Iran. Why? So cruise ships with fat Caucasians from the Americas can go to Iran? Or maybe it's because there's going to be a lot more enriched uranium coming out of Iran than anyone knows about. And a convenient way to be able to get it there without a pipeline is through control of the ports of Iran. And Richard Verma was part of setting that up as well. Now, I think there's been enough objections that those construction projects have halted. I don't really know where all the enriched uranium is being piled up. But there's a lot that's happening that we don't know. I'm not here to tell you everything. I'm here to tell you more than enough to blow your mind and to convince you that none of us really know exactly what's happening. But I promise you, what is happening is not what's on the TV right now. Not at all. Richard Verma has been such an important dude. Oh, he tied so many things together for me. I don't even know how to summarize this episode. I don't. It's a lot of things I just threw out there. Okay? I know it was a long setup. I did a longer intro today, about 15, 18 minutes. And a lot of things here are things no one else has ever talked about and are trying really hard not to talk about. But there's a reason why Judy Mikovits is still out there. There's a reason why the failure of a lawyer, Werner Mendenhall of Scott Schara, who had his case blown, I think, intentionally by CHD and Mendenhall. And Mendenhall, of course, is like this with, I think, Robert Malone as well. Mendenhall is now promoting, Judy Mikovits. That's right, the team that just failed to help Scott Schara, that failed to set any good precedents to follow, that failed to really highlight how to have a proper lawsuit and how to hit the issues right and how to focus on things that can win cases regarding protocols, is now immediately refocusing on doing tweets to promote Judy Mikovits. The same Judy Mikovits that lost her whatever honor, back in 2011. Oh, and that's right. And both the scientists, Dr. Kwante Zhang or KT Zhang, and the other doctor, Mark Windber, who wrote the paper about why Judy Mikovits' data regarding XMRV at the Whittemore Peterson Institute WPI was bad. Both of those guys died suspiciously. 1 and 2 feet of water. The other fell off the top of a multi-level parking garage. Again, more deaths. As a matter of fact, there's several deaths connected with Judy Mikovits. Crazier still, that's right. Anthony Fauci never would have gotten the money for his Vaccine Research Center's VRC from the Clintons if it wasn't for that dude winding up being found dead in the park. Oh, found dead by the stepbrother of Judy Mikovits. Isn't it amazing how even the deaths around Judy Mikovits seem to benefit Fauci and Hillary Clinton? And there's a whole bunch of people who worked on HTLV3, all related to Kwante Zhang, all dying of crazy heart attacks and, esophageal cancers. Oh, that's odd. Oh, that's right. Robert Malone, the main name on his paper that was really used to justify why he was the person to be there and the person to lead this I invented mRNA crap with COVID-19. That was John Wolfe. John Wolfe also died of the sudden esophageal cancer. Probably came from a transfection agent that was fed to him at one day. It's probably in 2019, the same time they poisoned Tony Bark. And then they both died in 2020, just in time to not be a problem for COVID-19. Because it's more than just plane crashes for Hillary Clinton. Or whoever supports her. I don't know who supports her. We only know the facade. All we know is the wallpaper. So, that's a lot of stuff to put out there. We're going to get back after this. You're going to have to re-listen to this 2 or 3 times. That's your homework, I guess. You're going to have to keep asking, why won't anyone else talk about this? How many other failures and frauds and distractions are out there? I promise you. You know who wants to listen to more stuff, more good podcasts? Me. I want to turn on and listen to people talking about all kinds of excellent research. I got nothing to listen to. I listen to stand-up comics and I listen to movies on replay and audiobooks because it's nothing more than a whole bunch of nonsense streaming of lies hour after hour after hour by everyone who at least not on the internet bright web. Independent bright web, which including Jonathan Cooey, Giga-Ohm Biological, and Joe Marshall of the Liberty Perspective. He can't even get alerts out for his videos. I want to listen to more stuff. It's all lies. It's all garbage. Terrible research. All right. Okay. That's my Sunday show, everyone. I know I didn't look at chat at all. If I had nothing to talk about, I would be doing the chat. And this is still a high level. 42 is my lucky number. It's an hour and 42 in. All right, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you. Take care. Thank you for the support. God bless. See you this upcoming week.